The wind screamed against the walls of the small mountain hut like a living thing trying to get inside. Hyun-woo pressed his hand against the window and felt the cold seeping through the thick glass. The thermometer outside read -38 degrees, and it was still dropping. The blizzard had arrived 3 hours earlier than the weather service predicted. He moved away from the window and checked his equipment one more time. The atmospheric sensors were secure. The backup generator had full fuel. He had enough food and water for 2 weeks, if needed. The research station was small, just one main room with a sleeping area, a kitchen corner, and his work desk covered in monitors and instruments. It was home for now. Hyun-woo had been alone on this mountain for 6 weeks, monitoring unusual electromagnetic patterns in the upper atmosphere. Something was interfering with satellite communications in this region, and his job was to figure out what. The work was lonely, but important. He didn't mind the isolation. The mountain was peaceful, even when the weather turned deadly. He made himself instant noodles for dinner and sat at his desk, watching the data streams on his screens. The electromagnetic readings were spiking again, stronger than before. That was strange. The patterns didn't match anything natural. They looked almost controlled, like signals rather than random interference. Then something caught his eye through the window. A streak of light cut through the darkness and snow, moving too slowly to be a meteor. It had a trajectory, a path that curved and adjusted. Hyun-woo jumped up and pressed his face to the glass. The light was descending toward the mountain, but it was wobbling, losing control. There was a flash somewhere below his position, maybe 2 kilometers down the slope. The whole mountainside lit up for a second, then went dark. The sound came later. A deep boom that he felt more than heard through the storm. Something had crashed. Hyun-woo stood frozen, his mind racing. In this weather, nothing could survive out there for long. The wind chill would kill a person in minutes. But what if someone needed help? What if it was an aircraft? He checked his radio, but there was only static. The storm was blocking all communications. He paced back and forth, arguing with himself. Going out in this blizzard was suicide. He couldn't see 3 meters in front of his face. The snow was already waist-deep and getting deeper, but the thought of someone dying out there while he stayed warm inside made his stomach turn. Hyun-woo was still debating when he heard the sound. It was faint at first, barely audible over the howling wind. A thumping sound. Rhythmic. Desperate. Someone was knocking on his door. He grabbed his flare gun from the emergency kit. It was the only weapon he had. His heart pounded as he approached the door. The knocking grew more frantic, then stopped. He heard a soft thud, like something heavy falling. "Hello?" he shouted in Korean, then in English. No response. Hyun-woo unbolted the door and pushed. The wind fought him, and snow blasted into his face. He could barely see anything in the whiteout. Then, he looked down. There was a figure collapsed in the snow right outside his door. He couldn't make out any details through the storm, but the person wasn't moving. Hyun-woo didn't think. He dropped the flare gun, grabbed the figure under the arms, and pulled. The person was surprisingly light. He dragged them inside and slammed the door against the wind. Snow covered everything. Hyun-woo brushed it away from the figure's face and froze. This wasn't a person. At least not a human person. The face was humanoid but different. The bone structure was more delicate, refined. The skin had a pale blue tint, with patterns that seemed to glow faintly. Like bioluminescent markings, the eyes were closed. But he could see they were larger than human eyes, with a different shape. The figure wore a suit made of material he didn't recognize, sleek and form-fitting. But it was torn and damaged in several places. An alien. There was an alien unconscious on his floor. Hyun-woo's hands shook as he checked for breathing. The chest rose and fell, but the breaths were shallow and rapid. The alien's skin was ice-cold to the touch. Hypothermia. The injuries looked bad, too. Burns on the arms, a gash on the leg, and the way the left shoulder sat suggested dislocation, or worse. He pushed his shock aside. Injured was injured, human or not. Hyun-woo had wilderness first aid training. He dragged the alien closer to the heater and started removing the damaged suit. Underneath was a simple undergarment. The alien was female, he realized. Based on the body structure, he wrapped her in every blanket he had and positioned her near the heater, but not too close. He elevated her injured leg and checked her vital signs as best as he could. The heartbeat was there, faster than human, but steady. She was alive. Hyun-woo cleaned the wounds with antiseptic and bandaged them with supplies from his first aid kit. The shoulder was definitely dislocated. He'd have to fix that when she woke up. If she woke up. He couldn't do it while she was unconscious without risking more damage. He sat back on his heels and looked at her. An alien. A real, actual alien. They existed. They were here. And one had just crashed on his mountain during the worst blizzard of the season. The damaged suit had some kind of device on the wrist. It was cracked and dark. No lights or displays. Technology far beyond anything he'd seen. Her ship must have crashed in that explosion he saw. But why was she here? Were there others? Hyun-woo checked the window. The storm raged on, showing no signs of stopping. Even if there were others out there, he couldn't help them now. He could barely save this one. He made hot tea and sat at his desk, watching the alien woman breathe. His hands were still shaking from adrenaline. The research that brought him to this mountain suddenly seemed very unimportant. Everything he thought he knew about the universe had just changed. The wind howled outside. The heater hummed. And an alien woman lay wrapped in blankets on his floor, fighting for her life while the storm tried to kill everything on the mountain. Hyun-woo sipped his tea and wondered what would happen when she woke up. Would she be afraid? Grateful? Hostile? He looked at his flare gun on the floor where he'd dropped it. Then, he looked back at the alien. She was small, vulnerable, and far from home. Whatever happened next, he'd already made his choice when he pulled her inside. The storm could rage all it wanted. Inside this small hut on a frozen mountain, a human man kept watch over an alien life, wondering if morning would bring answers or just more questions. Rina woke to pain and warmth. Both were confusing. She should be dead. The ship had lost power during the descent, and the emergency systems failed in the storm. The last thing she remembered was crawling through deep snow, her suit failing. Cold seeping into her bones. She'd seen a light, a structure. Then, nothing. Now she was warm. Too warm. And everything hurt. She opened her eyes slowly. The ceiling above her was made of rough wood and metal. Not her ship. Not any Velen design. Her head felt heavy. Her thoughts slow. The air tasted wrong, too rich, too thick with oxygen. She tried to sit up, and her shoulders screamed in protest. Easy. Easy. A voice spoke in an unfamiliar language. Deep. Close by. Rina turned her head and saw him. A human. Her body went rigid with instinct before her mind could process. Every training brief, every warning, every whispered story came flooding back. Humans. Death. World predators. Class 5. Threat rating. Forward-facing eyes. Dense muscle structure. Apex species from a planet that killed most things that tried to live on it. The human was sitting at a desk a few meters away, holding a cup of something hot. Steam rose from it. He was watching her with those predator eyes, dark and focused. He was smaller than she expected from the descriptions, but still bigger than her. His clothing was simple, practical. He moved with the casual ease of something that had never been prey. You're awake. That's good. The human spoke again, and this time her translator implant kicked in, converting his words to something she could understand. The device must have repaired itself during her unconscious state. You were in bad shape. How do you feel? Ren. Unconscious. Ren. 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 Rena's breathing quickened. She was wrapped in blankets. Her suit gone. Vulnerable. Injured. Alone with a human on their death world. Her hand moved to her wrist where her emergency beacon should be. Looking for this? The human gestured to her damaged suit on the floor near the heater. I had to take it off. It was wet. And torn. You would have died from cold. She stared at him. Her mind raced through her options. She couldn't fight. Her leg was bandaged. Her shoulder useless. She couldn't run. Even if she could walk, the storm outside would kill her in minutes. She couldn't call for help. Her beacon was broken. The human was still watching her. Waiting. She realized he was keeping his distance deliberately. His hands were visible, holding only the cup. Non-threatening posture. But that meant nothing. Humans were ambush predators. They could wait. They were patient. Who are you? Rena's voice came out weak, shaky. She hated how afraid she sounded. My name is Hyunwoo. I'm a researcher. I monitor atmospheric conditions for the Korean Science Institute. He spoke slowly, clearly, as if he understood her translator might struggle. I found you outside my door during the blizzard. You were dying. Why did you bring me inside? The question came out more aggressive than she intended. Hyunwoo looked surprised by the question. Because you needed help. What else would I do? That didn't make sense. Resources on death worlds were precious. Strangers were threats. The survival logic of harsh environments dictated that you protected yourself first. Yet this human had saved her, an alien, for no apparent benefit. What do you want? Rena asked. Want? Hyunwoo set his cup down on the desk. I want you to recover. I want the storm to pass, so we can figure out how to contact your people. I want to make sure you're okay. Rena's training told her this was deception. Humans were intelligent. They understood tactics, psychology, manipulation. This friendly behavior was a trap, but her rational mind pointed out that she'd been unconscious and helpless for hours. If he wanted to harm her, he already would have. She tried to sit up again, and pain shot through her entire body. A sound escaped her throat. Half gasp. Half whimper. Hyunwoo stood up, and Rena flinched back. She couldn't help it. He was moving toward her. He stopped immediately, hands raised. Sorry. Sorry. I'm not going to hurt you. Your shoulder is dislocated. It needs to be set. But I waited for you to wake up. I'm tell discap to science lab and staring barding. 2000 self. I didn't want to do it while you were unconscious. Stay back. Rena heard the panic in her own voice. Her hearts were racing. Her breathing shallow. Every instinct screamed danger. Hyunwoo backed up slowly until he was at his desk again. He sat down, making himself smaller, less threatening. Okay. I'll stay here. But that shoulder needs medical attention. Without it, the damage could be permanent. Rena looked at her shoulder. It sat wrong, the angle unnatural. The pain was getting worse, not better. She knew he was right. But letting him touch her, letting those predator hands near her body, every part of her rebelled against it. I won't force you, Hyunwoo said quietly. It's your choice. But I'm trained in wilderness first aid. I know what I'm doing. Why are you helping me? Rena asked again. She needed to understand. The galaxy's information on humans was limited, but consistent. They were warriors, mercenaries, survivors. Compassion didn't feature prominently in the descriptions. Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, thinking. Because you're hurt and alone and far from home. Because leaving you to die would be wrong. Because. He paused. Because if I were the one who crashed on an alien world, I'd hope someone would help me. The simple logic of it struck her. Empathy. He was extending empathy across species lines. That required a level of abstract thinking and emotional complexity that most species only developed after leaving their home worlds. Humans had it naturally. Your species, Rena said slowly. We've heard stories. Humans are hired as soldiers, guards. They fight for money. Your world is classified as too dangerous for colonization. Hyunwoo smiled, but it was sad. Earth is harsh, yes. We've had to be tough to survive. But that doesn't make us monsters. We're still people. Your eyes, Rena whispered. You have hunter's eyes. Forward-facing. Binocular vision. You evolved to chase down prey. Maybe, Hyunwoo acknowledged. But we also evolved to take care of each other. Humans survived because we worked together. Because we helped those who couldn't help themselves. We're social animals, not solo predators. Rena wanted to believe him. Part of her, the rational part, did believe him. He'd saved her life. He was offering medical help. He was keeping his distance because she was afraid. These weren't the actions of a threat. But millions of years of evolution didn't care about logic. The storm, she said, changing the subject. How long? It's been about 8 hours since I found you. The storm should last another day, maybe 2. After that, we can try to repair your beacon and contact your people. 2 days. Trapped with a human for 2 days. Rena closed her eyes and tried to calm her breathing. She was a trained scout. She'd studied hundreds of alien species. Fear was natural. But she couldn't let it control her. The shoulder, she said finally. What do you need me to do? Hyunwoo's face showed relief. I'll need to get closer. I'll talk you through everything before I do it. You tell me if you need me to stop. Okay? Rena nodded, not trusting her voice. As Hyunwoo slowly approached, she watched his every movement. His hands were steady. His expression was focused, but gentle. When he knelt beside her, she could smell something on him, soap maybe, and another scent underneath, distinctly human but not unpleasant. This is going to hurt, he warned. I'm sorry. And as his hands carefully positioned her shoulder, as the brief, sharp pain gave way to relief when the joint popped back into place, Rena realized something that would have shocked her superiors. She was beginning to trust a human. The hours after Hyunwoo set her shoulder were strange for Rena. The pain had lessened to a dull ache, and he'd given her something he called medicine. Small, white tablets that helped. He'd returned to his desk after treating her, giving her space, and the distance helped her think more clearly. She watched him work at his computer, checking numbers and graphs she didn't understand. Sometimes he would look out the window at the storm, his expression thoughtful. Other times he would write in a paper notebook, actual physical paper, which seemed oddly primitive for a species capable of space observation. Are you hungry? He asked after some time had passed. I have food. Not much variety, I'm afraid. Mostly dried noodles and canned vegetables. But it's warm. Rena's stomach responded before she could. The sound was unmistakable. She felt heat rise to her face in embarrassment. When had she last eaten? Before the mission started. More than a day ago. Hyunwoo smiled, and Rena noticed it was different from the sad smile before. This one reached his eyes, made them crinkle at the corners. I'll take that as a yes. Do you have any dietary restrictions? Things you can't eat? I don't know. Rena admitted. Velen biology is similar to yours in many ways, but I've never eaten human food. Velen, is that what you're called? Hyunwoo moved to his small kitchen area. Your species name? Yes. I'm Rena. Scout class. 3rd level. I was charting this region when my ship's systems failed. She was sharing information freely now, which would have horrified her commander. But she was beyond hiding. Either he was trustworthy, or she was already doomed. Hyunwoo, he said, introducing himself properly even though he'd said it before. Atmospheric researcher, usually stuck on mountains alone. Apparently bad at predicting when aliens will drop by. Was that humor? Rena had studied human communication, but humor was difficult to translate. The attempt at lightness seemed genuine, though. An attempt to ease the tension between them. He prepared food, boiling water, and adding dried noodles and vegetables. The smell was strange, but not unpleasant. He brought her a bowl, still keeping a respectful distance, and showed her how to use the eating utensils he called chopsticks. Rena tried the food cautiously. It was hot and salty, and much spicier than Velen cuisine. The spice made her eyes water. But underneath that was something savory and satisfying. Her body responded positively. Apparently, human food wouldn't kill her. Too spicy? Hyunwoo asked, noticing her reaction. It's different, but good. She took another bite. Your species enjoys strong flavors. Koreans especially, he said with a small laugh. We like our food to have personality. My grandmother used to say bland food was depressing food. You mentioned family. Rena found herself curious despite her lingering caution. Are you in contact with them? Hyunwoo's expression shifted, became softer. Not right now. The storm blocks all communications. But yes, usually, I video call my mother every few days. She worries when I'm on these remote assignments. Your mother worries? The concept struck Rena as significant. Even though you're an adult? Then, aren't? Of course, parents worry. That's what they do. He seemed puzzled by her question. Rena absorbed this. In Velen culture, once offspring reached maturity, family bonds became more distant. The idea that his parents still actively cared about his well-being, enough to worry, spoke to deeper emotional connections than she expected. You said Earth is harsh. Rena began carefully. That your people had to be tough to survive. But you seem, she searched for the word, gentle. Hyunwoo set his bowl down and considered this. Tough and gentle aren't opposites. My grandfather was the strongest person I ever knew. He survived a war, raised 5 children, worked until he was 80. But he was also the kindest. He said real strength is knowing when not to use it. The philosophy behind this was complex. Rena struggled to align it with what she'd been taught about Death World species. Survival of the fittest. Competition for resources. Aggression as a survival trait. Yet here was this human, capable of surviving in conditions that would kill her, choosing kindness. May I ask you something? Hyunwoo said. Why were you so afraid when you woke up? I mean, beyond the obvious of being hurt and stranded. Rena hesitated, then decided honesty might be fair after he'd saved her life. Because you're human. Because your species has a reputation in certain parts of the galaxy. You come from a death world. Your physical capabilities are far beyond most spacefaring species. You're hired as mercenaries, soldiers, security forces. There are stories of humans doing things that would kill anyone else, and just continuing. Hyunwoo looked genuinely surprised. The galaxy knows about us? I thought first contact hadn't happened yet. Official contact, no. But humans have been exploring for decades. Some of you ended up in alien space, either by accident or by choice. Word spreads. You're known, just not officially, and we have a scary reputation. He said it as a statement, not a question. Your planet tried to kill you for millions of years, and you refused to die. You turned the animals that hunted you into companions. You survived ice ages and plagues and predators that outweighed you 10 times over. You learned to shape metal and stone, to control fire, to reach beyond your world despite having no natural ability to survive in space. You did it through pure stubborn determination. Rena met his eyes. Yes, you have a scary reputation. Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. I never thought of it that way. To us, we're just normal. We did what we had to do to survive. Every species does that, don't they? No, Rena said softly. Most species evolved on worlds much gentler than yours. They had time, stability, abundant resources. They reached space through slow, natural progress over millions of years. Humans did it in a fraction of that time because you had to. Because your world pushed you to adapt or die. She could see him processing this information, his human mind working through the implications. The gravity he was sitting in so comfortably would exhaust her in hours. The cold that he called merely chilly would kill most Velans. The atmospheric pressure was crushing compared to her home world. Yet he lived here, thrived here, and didn't even think it was remarkable. We're not monsters, though, Hyunwoo said finally. We can be violent when we need to be. Yes. But we can also be compassionate, creative, curious. We make art and music. We tell stories. We care about each other. We're complicated, like any intelligent species. I'm beginning to understand that, Rena admitted. You saved my life when you didn't have to. You're treating my injuries. You're sharing your food. These aren't the actions of a monster, just the actions of a person, Hyunwoo said. That's all I am. Just a person trying to do the right thing. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the mountain. Inside, an alien woman and a human man shared a meal and began to see each other as something more than their species' reputations. The barrier between them hadn't completely fallen, but it had started to crack. Rena found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had misunderstood humans. Or perhaps had only understood part of the truth. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they were tough. But they were also capable of crossing the vast distance between fear and trust, with nothing but patience and kindness. Tell me about your family, Rena said. The ones who worry about you. And Hyunwoo, surprised but pleased, began to talk. By the second day, Rena could move around the hut with help. Hyunwoo had fashioned a crutch from cleaning supplies and padding, and while it wasn't elegant, it worked. Her shoulder was tightly bound, and though it hurt, the injury was manageable. She was healing faster than expected, which she attributed to the high oxygen environment. Her body was working overtime in this rich atmosphere. She was examining her damaged suit when Hyunwoo called her over to his desk. I managed to salvage something from your equipment. This device on your wrist. I think it might be more than just an emergency beacon. Rena hobbled over and felt a surge of relief. It's a data pad. It connects to my ship's main computer. If it's functional, I might be able to access our database. Try it, Hyunwoo encouraged, handing her the device carefully. She pressed the activation spot. And after a moment of flickering, the holographic display came to life. It was damaged, but functional. Rena navigated through the interface, relief flooding her when she saw that the core data was intact. What information do you have there? Hyunwoo asked, curious but respectful of her privacy. Rena hesitated, then made a decision. He'd been honest with her. She would return that honesty. Everything. Star maps, species databases, cultural information. It's standard equipment for scouts. We're supposed to observe and record. She pulled up a specific file, including information about Earth and humans. Really? Can I see? Rena angled the display so he could view it. The file on humans was extensive, compiled from multiple sources over several decades. She watched his face as he read, saw his expressions shift from curiosity to surprise to something that might have been sadness. This says we're classified as a Class 12 Death World species, he read slowly. High danger rating. Recommended approach protocols include armed escorts, no physical contact, maintain minimum distance of 10 meters. He looked at Rena. You must have been terrified. I was, she admitted. I still am. A little. But you're making it hard to stay afraid. Hyunwoo scrolled through more entries. Human mercenary unit defeats 40 pirates with 5 soldiers. Human explorer survives 30 days on a Class 13 death world. With minimal supplies. Human miners work in environments that would kill most species within hours. He leaned back. These things really happened? According to multiple verified sources, yes. Rena pulled up another file. There are entire security companies that pay humans triple the standard rate because one human can do the work of 3 soldiers from other species. Your endurance, pain tolerance, and adaptability make you extremely valuable. But also frightening, Hyunwoo said quietly. Yes, Rena agreed. Because those same traits that make you valuable make you dangerous. A species that doesn't know when to quit, that pushes through pain and exhaustion, that adapts to nearly any environment. That's terrifying to species who evolved without those pressures. Hyunwoo was quiet for a long time, staring at the data. Finally, he said, I need to show you something. He led her to the window. The storm had lessened slightly, and through the swirling snow, she could see the landscape. Jagged mountain peaks stretched in every direction, coated in ice and snow. The terrain was brutal, unforgiving, beautiful in a harsh way. My ancestors lived in places like this thousands of years ago, Hyunwoo said. No technology beyond stone tools and fire. No heated buildings. Just determination and cooperation. They survived ice ages here, in temperatures that would make this storm look mild. He pointed to the south. And in other parts of Earth, humans survived in deserts where the temperature reached 50 degrees Celsius, in jungles filled with venomous animals, on tiny islands in massive oceans. We spread everywhere because we could adapt. Rena looked at the deadly landscape and tried to imagine surviving there with primitive tools. It seemed impossible. Yet, humans had done exactly that. We're not special, though, Hyunwoo continued. We just are what our world made us. Earth was our teacher, and it was a harsh one. It taught us to be tough, yes. But it also taught us to work together. A human alone in the Ice Age would die, but humans together, sharing food and fire and knowledge, they could survive. We learned that cooperation was just as important as strength. That's the paradox, Rena said, understanding clicking into place. You're individually formidable, but also deeply social. You're dangerous, but also capable of great compassion. The galaxy doesn't understand how those traits exist together. Maybe because other species didn't need to develop both? Hyunwoo suggested. If your world was gentle, you didn't need the hardness. And if you didn't need the hardness, you had more room for gentleness. Quote, Rena thought about her homeworld, Vela. Stable temperatures year-round. Abundant plant life. The largest predator was barely the size of her forearm. Resources were plentiful. Her people had never faced the kind of pressure that would forge them into something harder. They'd never needed to become dangerous to survive. Earth made you strong enough to be kind, Rena said slowly. You can afford compassion because you're secure in your ability to survive. Hyunwoo smiled at that. My grandfather used to say something similar. He said the strongest person in the room can afford to be the kindest because they have nothing to prove. They stood together at the window, watching the storm. Rena felt a strange sense of peace, despite being stranded on a death world with a species she'd been taught to fear. Hyunwoo's presence was becoming comfortable rather than threatening. When your people come, Hyunwoo said, what will you tell them? About humans? The truth, Rena replied. That you saved my life when you could have ignored me. That you shared your resources. That you're far more complex than our reports suggest. She paused. I'll recommend official first contact. The galaxy needs to meet humans properly, not through rumors and mercenary contracts. Will they listen to you? I don't know. Fear is powerful, but so is curiosity. And humans are fascinating, even if you're also frightening. She looked at him. You asked earlier why I was so afraid. It wasn't just your reputation. It was your eyes. Hyunwoo touched his face self-consciously. Forward-facing. Predator's eyes. Designed for tracking and hunting. Most prey species have eyes on the sides of their heads for wider vision. My people evolved from prey animals. Those instincts don't disappear just because we developed intelligence. When I looked at you, every ancient part of my brain screamed danger. And now? Hyunwoo asked. Rina considered the question. She looked into those dark, forward-facing eyes that had terrified her. Now she saw kindness there. Intelligence. Concern. The predator was still present. That fundamental nature couldn't be hidden. But it was controlled. Chosen. Directed by a mind that valued more than just survival. Now I see a person, she said. Someone who chose to save a stranger's life in the middle of a killer storm. Someone who shares his food even when supplies are limited. Someone whose ancestors survived hell and decided to be kind anyway. She managed a small smile. I still see the predator, but I also see the person who controls it. Hyunwoo's expression showed relief and something deeper, gratitude perhaps. Thank you for giving me a chance despite your fear. I know it wasn't easy. You made it easier than it should have been, Rina admitted. Outside, the wind began to die down. The storm was finally ending. Soon, Rina would repair her beacon and contact her ship. The rescue would come, and this strange interlude on a human death world would end. But something had changed fundamentally in how she understood the species beside her. The galaxy saw humans as dangerous. They weren't wrong, but they were incomplete. Humans were dangerous, yes, but also capable of incredible kindness. They were survivors who chose to be more than just survivors. And that, Rina thought, was worth sharing with the rest of the galaxy. On the third morning, the storm had passed completely. The sky was clear and blue, and sunlight reflected off the snow so brightly that it hurt to look at. Hyunwoo helped Rina work on her emergency beacon, and together they managed to repair enough of the circuitry to get a signal out. The response came faster than expected. A Velen rescue ship was already in the system, searching for her. They would arrive within 6 hours. 6 hours, Rina said, looking at the device with mixed feelings. Relief. Certainly. She would be safe soon, back with her own people. But there was also something else. Something like sadness at the thought of leaving. You'll be home soon, Hyunwoo said. But his voice carried a similar uncertain emotion. That's good. They spent the remaining time in quiet activity. Hyunwoo prepared food packages for Rina to take with her, things that would be safe for her to eat during the journey home. He included the medical supplies he'd used to treat her, sealed in a clean container. He even wrapped one of his thermal blankets in plastic. You don't have to give me these things, Rina protested. You need them here. I have more supplies coming next week, Hyunwoo said. And you have a long journey. Take them. I want you to be comfortable. There it was again, that casual generosity that still surprised her. He was giving away resources without expecting anything in return. It went against every survival instinct for death world species. Yet he did it as naturally as breathing. When the ship appeared in the sky, descending through the clear air, Rina felt her hearts beat faster. The vessel was small, a scout class like her own, designed for quick retrieval missions. It landed in a flat area about 50 meters from the hut, snow blowing away from the propulsion systems. Hyunwoo helped Rina outside, supporting her weight as she walked through the deep snow. The air was bitterly cold, maybe minus 30 degrees, but he seemed comfortable in just his jacket and boots. Rina's suit, hastily repaired with tape and sealant from Hyunwoo's supplies, struggled to keep her warm. The ship's door opened, and 2 Velens emerged, wearing full environmental suits rated for extreme conditions. Behind them came a third figure, taller and broader. The captain, Rina realized. He was examining the area with the caution of someone on an unknown world. Scout Rina, the captain called out in Velon. His translator would make it understandable to Hyunwoo. We've been searching for 3 days. Are you injured? Captain Tae-jin. Rina responded formally. I have injuries, but they are treated. I am stable for transport. Tae-jin's gaze shifted to Hyunwoo, and Rena saw the captain's body language change subtly. Recognition, caution, fear, carefully controlled, but present. "You are human," Taejin said, switching to the common trading language that his translator could handle. "I am," Hyunwoo replied calmly. "My name is Hyunwoo. I found Rena during the storm and provided shelter and medical assistance." "I see." Taejin's tone was carefully neutral. "We are grateful for your assistance. We will compensate you for resources used." "That's not necessary," Hyunwoo said, surprising them all. Taejin looked at Hyunwoo with visible confusion. The concept of refusing payment seemed to genuinely puzzle him. "You saved her life and treated her injuries, and you want nothing in return?" "She needed help," Hyunwoo said simply. "That's all the reason I needed." One of the other villains whispered something to Taejin. Rena caught the words, "death world," and "typical behavior patterns." They were trying to categorize Hyunwoo's actions within their understanding of human psychology, and failing. "Captain," Rena spoke up, "this human showed me exceptional kindness. He risked his life to pull me from the storm. He shared his limited supplies. Why? He treated my injuries with skill and care. Without him, I would certainly be dead." Taejin studied Hyunwoo for a long moment. "You're smaller than I expected," he admitted. "The reports suggest humans are larger." Hyunwoo smiled slightly. "We come in many sizes, but we're all equally stubborn. Or so I'm told." That broke some of the tension. Taejin's posture relaxed marginally. "I have read reports about your species. This stubbornness is mentioned frequently. Also, your capacity for surviving impossible situations. Earth taught us to survive," Hyunwoo said. "But it also taught us to help each other. Humans alone die quickly. Humans together can overcome almost anything." The medical team was checking Rena now, scanning her injuries, administering pain medication that worked better than Hyunwoo's simple tablets. But she kept her attention on the conversation between the captain and the human. "Your world is classified as too dangerous for most species," Taejin said. "Yet you live here in this remote location alone. By choice." Number 4. "Someone has to monitor the atmospheric data," Hyunwoo replied. "And I don't mind the isolation. The mountain is beautiful, even when it's trying to kill me." Taejin's translator struggled with that last phrase. "Trying to kill him," said with humor, with affection almost. A Death World native who loved his harsh home despite its dangers. The cognitive dissonance was clear on the captain's face. "We should return to the ship," one of the medical staff said to Rena. "Your injuries need proper treatment." Rena nodded but turned to Hyunwoo first. "How did you say goodbye to someone who saved your life? How did you express gratitude for kindness that changed your entire understanding of a species?" "Thank you," she said, the words inadequate. "For everything. For my life." "You're welcome," Hyunwoo replied. "I hope your journey home is safe. And Rena, when you tell your people about humans, tell them the whole truth. We can be dangerous, yes. But we can also be friends." "I will," she promised. "I'll make them understand." Hyunwoo handed her the package of supplies he'd prepared. As the medical team helped her toward the ship, Rena looked back at the small hut where she'd spent 3 days with a human. From the outside, it looked so fragile, so inadequate against the harsh mountain environment. But inside, it had been warm and safe. A shelter not just from the storm, but from her own prejudices and fears. The ship's interior was familiar and comfortable. The gravity adjusted to Velen normal, and Rena felt the relief of weight lifting from her body. Through the viewport, she watched Hyunwoo standing in the snow, one hand raised in farewell. He looked small against the vast white landscape, but he also looked at home. This was his world, harsh and beautiful and deadly, and he had chosen to be kind in it. "Scout Rena," Captain Taejin said as the ship lifted off. You will need to file a full report on this incident, including your contact with the human. I know, Captain. Rena watched as the hut shrank below them. And I'll be recommending official first contact protocols be initiated with Earth. Tajin looked surprised. That's a significant recommendation. It's a necessary one, Rena said firmly. The galaxy knows of humans, but we don't understand them. We see them as mercenaries and warriors, and we miss what's really important. They're strong enough to be gentle. They're survivors who choose compassion. If we approach them only with fear, we'll never know what partnership with them could bring. And if they're dangerous? Tajin asked. They are dangerous, Rena admitted. But so is any species worth knowing. The question is whether that danger is directed at enemies or shared with allies. Hyun-woo showed me the answer. As the ship broke atmosphere and headed for deep space, Rena composed her report in her mind. She would tell them about the storm and the crash, about waking to terror and learning to trust, about a human who lived alone on a frozen mountain and chose to save a stranger's life. The galaxy would learn about humans eventually. First contact was inevitable. But maybe, if Rena's report was convincing enough, that contact could begin with understanding rather than fear, with cooperation rather than caution. Far below, on a small mountain on a death world called Earth, Hyun-woo returned to his hut and his research. He had work to do, and another storm coming next week, but he smiled as he worked, thinking about the alien woman who'd crashed during the blizzard and panicked when she saw him. She'd been so afraid at first. But fear could become understanding, and understanding could become something more. Maybe one day, humans wouldn't be known just as the dangerous species from the death world. Maybe they'd be known as friends. It was a nice thought, worth surviving for.